Here we are on beautiful Jones Street.
You saw Ted Jones.
I think we're ready to rock and roll.
There he is, Mr. Nick. Tornaritis, what's up, pal?
Oh, yeah.
We're live, dude. So this water's here for you, man. So that
thanks,
thing goes
man.
back and
This
forth,
goes,
not
yeah.
up and down. Enjoy,
Wow.
man.
I feel like I'm being spoiled.
You know what, dude? I'm realizing this now. You, like myself, kind of wear the same-ish thing each time I see you.
Well, I'm Greek. The Greeks are big on the black stuff.
Oh, okay.
A lot of
And New
black.
Yorkers, too. So I'm from
and
New
New
York.
Yorkers, yeah.
Yeah. And you're from Boston originally.
Yeah, exactly. Boston guy.
You and I think, first started seeing each other probably like, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago. And you're a good guy, man. So I'm happy to have you on the podcast. Thanks so much for coming over.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm pumped.
How often do you get your haircut, as we just briefly discussed?
Well, it depends on the schedule, but I try to do it every 4 weeks.
Okay.
3 to 4.
Yeah, because the barbers,
Yeah.
they say that they want you in the shop every 3 to 4 weeks, which I guess makes sense because they want you in there for business. But
yeah.
the Greeks pay attention to their hair a lot. Is that that's the overall consensus, or what?
Well, in the summer, it's more frequent. In the winter, I'll let it go a little.
Uh-huh.
This new barber I have, he gave me some shit last time because
Why?
I went an extra week, and he was like, oh my God, it's long. And I'm like,
but why?
I was like, he was out for what's it was the Jewish, he's Jewish. It was the Jewish
Yom
holiday.
Kippur, maybe?
Yeah,
Rosh
yeah,
Hashanah?
Yeah, and I was like, I tried, man. I tried to get in, and he was like,
So
he's giving me some shit.
you
So,
grew
he's a good guy though.
You grew up in Boston, or you were born in Greece? What's the deal? Let's start from the beginning.
Yeah. I grew up in Boston, suburbs of Boston. My father's from Cyprus.
Oh, the small island.
Yeah, so you know where it is?
Isn't they speak French there, right?
It's mostly Greek, some Turkish. They were an English colony for a long time.
So was the French comment completely off?
No, I mean, I don't know if the geography is there in the eastern part of the Mediterranean, so it's next to
Marcos Bagdatis. You know about him?
I should.
The tennis player. That's how I know about
Okay.
Cyprus.
France conquered them a long time ago.
Okay.
So they were invaded by I think at some point. I hope I'm getting that right.
Small-ish island.
Yeah, very small.
Okay.
It's half ethnically Greek now, and Turkey invaded in '74.
Okay.
So we're
We're getting into
we're
the
getting
history
some
of it.
deep. Yeah. The reason I asked is growing up in the '80s and '90s, no one knew where Cyprus was. You'd say
Okay.
Cyprus, and they were like, "Is Cyprus Hills?"
No, an island.
Yeah, it's an island in the
And did you go to school in Boston too?
Yeah, grew up in Boston, a public high school, and went to Harvard.
You went to Harvard?
Yeah.
Wow.
Which I don't usually tell people. That,
Yeah, dude,
but
I had no idea.
I played soccer. I was recruited to play soccer there. So,
Bro.
Yeah.
What a
So
guy.
I snuck through the gates.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you play soccer at Harvard,
Yeah.
and I went to UConn. I don't know if you knew that. I played
nice.
tennis there.
Okay. Oh, shit.
But Harvard has a really good tennis team. I mean, all
Really
their
good.
sports are insane.
They had a guy, I think his name was Blake something when I was there. He was like maybe top 10 nationally
A
ranked.
tennis guy?
Yeah, he
The
was
thing
really
is,
good.
with college tennis, when you go to college to play tennis, you're not really, maybe you're not giving up on your dreams, but to play professional tennis, but it really will slow you down. Because most of the people who know that they're going to be a top 100, top 150 player, they forego college. It won't go.
It's the same for soccer where
Really?
because I always wanted to play pro, and similar to soccer, like in Europe, they develop you you become a pro at like 16 to 18, and if you don't, then you're not gonna be a pro.
UConn had a really good soccer team too,
Great
right?
soccer team.
Yeah, they were number one in the country when I was there.
Yeah, so I remember I had like a dilemma when I was like 17. I had an offer to go like train at the West Ham Academy in Europe.
Okay.
In London.
Yeah.
But that was right. I had to choose between like going to Harvard and going over to West Ham.
Whoa.
And
That must have been an insanely difficult
It was
decision.
very difficult, and I got to tell you, even through my 20s, I look back and I was like, what would my life have been if I had gone
What
that
number
route?
recruit were you in high school if you were like ranked a certain amount of country or like 5-star blue chip?
Well, so back at the time, Harvard had like 6 spots for soccer players every year that they could like
Full scholarships?
You're in.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was fortunate. Still grateful to have gone there. So yeah, played there, but similar to tennis where it might, playing college soccer, you lose an edge compared to like, because the guys in Europe, South America, they're training every day.
Yeah.
That's their focus, you know.
But
I had soccer, I had academics.
Yeah,
I was
but what
working
was your
part-time.
mindset at that particular time? Like, who convinced you to go to Harvard? Was it yourself, or was it your family, the coaches?
You know, I was so young, man.
Yeah, we really don't know
I
anything
know.
at that time, man.
I think my parents, because there was a big risk to going to train with West Ham at the time because there was no guarantee
No guarantee in terms of what?
in terms of like, you know, it was like a defined training period. I forget what it was. It was like a few months, and then they may have offered me a pro contract after, or maybe nothing.
But couldn't you have theoretically taken a year off at that time, or you wouldn't have been able to accept any money from that team, and then you wouldn't have been able to play in the NCAAs?
So yeah, that was one of the things. Even if you get signed for a short-term pro contract, then you can't play college.
Even if you didn't take the money from them?
Maybe, yeah, probably if I didn't take the money.
Because recently, I mean, I'm sure you guys listening and watching know now you can take certain forms of money in the NIL, which is name, image, and likeness, but you can't take money from certain. It's still like murky waters. Like, for example, some of these college tennis players who go and play in pro tournaments can't take that money. Like, if you win Kalamazoo, which is basically this big 18 and under national tournament, you get a wild card into the U.S. Open. And if you lose in the first round of the U.S. Open tennis championships, you get like a $95,000 prize, but you can't take that money. In other ways, you could take money, like if Gatorade offers you a sponsorship, you could take that money for your name, image, and likeness, but you can't take prize money. Which is, I mean, it's. I mean, we're in the baby stages of the NIL deals, but it's just crazy that you can take money from a certain place and then not from another place.
Yeah, it's definitely changed from when I was. I remember it was very strict when.
Yeah,
when,
same with me too.
Yeah, so you played all 4 years?
No, I played 2.5 years. Okay. Right around the 2.5 year mark, I was just not interested. I was smoking a lot of weed, which is, I mean, I wouldn't say it's like not related to me not wanting to play, but I was just not into it, man.
Yeah.
And the schedule for the tennis was so packed. There was so much that was required of me. And I was like, I'm not going pro. I knew by the time I was 16 years old, I wasn't going to go pro. But when I was like 14, 15, I had hopes and dreams to go pro. I ultimately didn't start early enough. In tennis, you have to really be out on the court with your dad every single day from the ages of like 4 or 5 years old. And then similar to soccer, there's so much competition. But tennis maybe more so because there's only 150 people in the world that can make a living playing tennis, where in soccer, you can maybe make a living in MLS. You can go to Europe. You can go to Australia or places that they have good teams.
So many more clubs. I mean, it's such a global thing. Tennis is like so, yeah, it just seems like there's so few like top tier spots.
Yeah. So by the time I decided I didn't want to play college tennis anymore, I was able to take more journalism classes. I had my own show at school. So I was doing more things that I like to do, like improv, acting related, and ultimately had a good college experience. But the reason I wanted to go to UConn was because of how good the sports program was. When I was a freshman in college, we won the national championship in basketball. The football team was like top 25. The soccer team was #1 in the country. And the reason that the tennis team even existed was because of all that money that was brought in. Yeah. And over COVID, the men's tennis team unfortunately got shut down. They removed the program because it was only costing the school money. So it was fun to play college tennis at that level, and UConn had good notoriety, but we were by no means like middle of the pack of D1. We were kind of towards the lower echelon. We were like BU, like around their level. So we were probably like in anywhere from like 100 to 120 in Division One, which is, I mean, when you say Division One, it's good. But what was Harvard ranked at the time when you went there? You guys must have been top 25.
Yeah, we went in and out of top 25s.
Yeah,
25 when I was there.
And you guys have go ahead.
I was just thinking of you playing. I mean, you must have been like Van Wilder on campus at UConn. I could
6-year senior.
I could just picture you driving around on that golf cart.
You know what? It was
like, hand me a racket.
It was it was different. You must
have had a blast.
Well, yeah,
I did.
I did have a blast, but I grew up in New York City, and going to school like in the middle of a farmland was so different for me, man. It was so different. It was really the only time that I've experienced in my life, those 4 years, where it was like, for me to get from place to place, I had to figure out a sober ride from like one of my friends who was in a frat. Nowadays, kids can get around with the Uber. Uber's at every college campus. Yeah. But it was just different because growing up in the city, by the time I was 14, 15 years old, I was taking the subway home at 11:30 p.m. from a house party after smoking cigarettes backwards.
Sure.
You know, but
Yeah.
in college,
smoking butts.
yeah, it was different. And I'm grateful that I had the experience, that I had such a different experience. But now, anytime I leave a place like New York City, I'm like, all right, I'm ready to go back wherever I'm at. It's so much slower. But you growing up in the suburbs and then going to school in a semi type of city where it's obviously not as hectic as New York, was that like a huge transition or no?
Yeah, I was gonna say I had almost the opposite because I grew up in a town called Groton, which is like at the time it was like the population was under 10,000 people.
So how many kids were in your high school?
Like 500 max.
Wow. Okay.
We didn't have a stop sign in the town when I was growing up. All right, like. We got a Dunkin' Donuts after I graduated college. Yeah, yeah. Can you believe that? So like I had the opposite experience where, I mean, Groton, even today, is like farm country. There are a couple of really well-known private schools, the Groton School, which is like where FDR went, Lawrence Academy, and that's about it. There's not much. It's beautiful, but it's very rural. So, you know, I grew up a little bit of country. You know, one of my first CDs was like a Garth Brooks CD. And then, so it was opposite to you, where then I went to college in the city. And I loved it. And
awesome. When did you move to New York?
3 years ago, 2021 summer. So
and you were living in Boston for a while, or what?
Most of my adult life, yeah. I after college, I lived in London for a little over a year. I was trying to play pro, and I lived in London for about a year. And then my girlfriend at the time was back in Boston, so. You know, whatever. I kind of, similar to you, I kind of just lost the passion for playing. And
well, when do you think you were at your peak in your soccer career?
I think 16, 17.
Really?
Which is like, that's when I should have, if I was going to go to Europe, I should have went then, because I was just kind of dialed in at that point.
Do you think you were one of the best players in New England at that time?
I think I was. I mean, my
dude, who knew? You never talk about this.
I know. I did. One of my old coaches was this guy, Steve Nicol, he was like a Liverpool legend. And he was the guy that set up the trial, like the thing with West Ham. And so, you know, I always look back and I'm like, that's one of those moments in life where you're like, if I had made different decisions back then, who knows, I probably wouldn't be here now. Or maybe I would, you know. So London, then I came back, lived most of my adult life has been in Boston. But I always wanted to live in New York City. So it was kind of like this confluence of events. You know, the pandemic hit. Well, the pandemic hit, I went through a divorce. And, you know, I sold our house. And I was like, I got an apartment back in downtown Boston, Southie, which is like, I don't know if you know, it's like become super trendy and popular. And I was like, all right, I'm going to get back on my feet, meet some chicks. And then the pandemic hit. And I was like, you have got to be fucking kidding me. And so, you know, that kind of, and then some of the guys I knew in Boston started coming down here because there was nothing in Boston, but there were at least some like mics and outdoor shows here. So I started coming down, and then I was like, you know what? I've always wanted to live here. While the world's in chaos, is a perfect time to make the move.
100%, especially being in New York. Just to jump back to what you were saying about your peak soccer career at 16 to 17, was there a moment, was there like a camp or a team that you played for, or people that you knew that now play professionally and are doing exceptionally well? Or did you kind of stay in the New England area where there weren't as many people as good as you?
I mean, there's some guys that I played with at Harvard that went pro. I've kind of lost touch with that crowd. For a while, it was hard for me. I don't know if you have a similar thing with tennis where for a while I had trouble watching.
Yeah, man.
I would get like,
I'll be fully transparent with you, man. It doesn't sound like I was at the level that you were at Harvard. Like for the most part, I had maybe a year and a half of my young high school career where I thought it could happen. But again, I just really felt like I didn't start young enough in tennis, because I was always the super athletic kid that could play basketball, baseball, and tennis. But I chose tennis for me when I was like 12 and a half, 13 years old. And by that time, there were kids who had it chosen for them by the time they were 4 or 5 years old.
It's like the King Richard movie, right? Where those are the ones with like the parents that are
yeah. And while some of those kids burn out, there are a lot of them that end up going to the top Division I schools, the ACC, SEC schools like Harvard, Columbia that are doing very well now, kids in Europe. So out of the people who don't burn out, a lot of them end up being top 500 in the world, which is insane how good that level is. There's so many different levels of tennis. You know, it's you see the 5 guys on TV that maybe you know 2 of them. Like, for example, you didn't know, obviously not your fault, you didn't know Marcos Spagdatis, who was a top 8 player from Cyprus.
Is he a Cypriot guy?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the only reason I know about him.
Apologize to my family.
It's okay,
for
Mr. Marcos Spagdatis. But he's enjoying retirement right now.
like-
He definitely looks like he's enjoying himself. I think he still trains, or he doesn't train, but he definitely still plays tennis, which is a great thing about tennis. You play for your whole life. But
got it. So he's retired now.
yeah, he's been retired for a number of years. But you really only hear of X amount of tennis players. Even if people are super into tennis, there's no way that you know more than 30 people. You know, people go to the U.S. Open. Oh, it's the sickest event of the year. You go once, you look forward to it. Maybe it's like the Stars event. You'll go once or twice.
Like
you
the
talk
Derby,
about,
right?
yeah, dude. You talk about it for about it for a week.
Yeah.
Get the little hat. That's it. And but tennis is a sport that you really have to start super young, and you don't have the support of teammates around you. You don't have other people that you're like, oh, well, this guy and I played on the same team. We saw each other every single day for 3 years. It's not really like that. You know, like the guys who were really, really good. I remember there was a kid who I beat when I was 16 years old. He was 12 years old. This kid, Noah Rubin. That was like the biggest win of my career. His career high was like 130 in the world. And he went 7-6 with Roger Federer. And that was like one of his career highlights. And that was that was my biggest win. And he was 4 years younger than me. But still, it's not like my biggest win was a guy who's like 8 in the world or something like that. So my level in terms of tennis, while I am really good at tennis, and it's all relative. It's all relative.
Are there guys in the maybe there are that like are not as good on the like their game's not as good, but they're getting better endorsement deals because personality or just looks or
but you do have to be in the Grand Slams. You have to be making the round of 16. Sorry, this fly is killing us. You do have to be in the mix. You have to be winning at least 3 or 4 matches a Grand Slam. Otherwise you're not relevant.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sorry, that fly is fucking all over the place. My bad,
I like
man.
attention.
It likes the Greeks. But it's just like you have to be relevant enough to get those deals. And while there are some people that maybe don't deserve it, they're still an insanely good tennis player.
So it's kind of similar to stand-up in the respects of like you're kind of up there, you're out there alone in that regard, similar to stand-up.
Yeah. And I think there are a lot of similarities in that I, for the most part, saw stand-up and tennis being similar in that it's mostly up to you how much you can do. And tennis, I was never that passionate about. I feel way more passionate about stand-up because there's so many parts of stand-up that I don't have to do that I do to contribute to my career or whatever's going on because I feel like it'll help.
Yeah.
And tennis, I was never really like that. I wasn't like, oh, like let's go out and do suicides on the court and run back and forth because I really want to be good at tennis. I never really got to that, that point. Did you feel that way with soccer?
I did for a long time. For some reason, I don't know why. Like my earliest memories were like, I'm gonna be a pro soccer player. I don't know why. I think maybe it was my father. He was like very intense and like he wanted me to play. But
so what happened at that time when you were 21 years old and you played pro in London?
I mean, London's I wish I could go back now that I'm more financially stable. You know, I was just a poor kid with no money after college, you know, living in London. And, you know, I was playing for a couple of really low-level teams. And I had a lot of injuries in college, probably because I was boozing too much and smoking too much, you know. And I just kind of lost it's so hard to make it there, obviously. And one of the other things was like I knew, because your career is so short-lived, you know, by
soccer.
Yeah. early mid-30s, you're going to be done. And I was like, I don't want to continue like coaching. I don't want to stay in the game after. So I was like, do I really want to be in my mid-30s trying to figure out like, oh, what the hell am I going to do with my life now?
What happened with Freddie Adu? You remember him?
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, he was like the next phenom.
I mean, he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated when he was like 14 years old. I think he got a couple MLS contracts or deals, and then by the time it seemed like he was 23 or 24, like that was really all you heard from him, right?
There's so many of those players. I mean,
Really?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, if you're not, that's why all the good players, most of the good players go to Europe or South America because that's like just the highest level of competition. But even in Europe, I mean, there's so many of those guys that are like show promise really young, and then either an injury or they just don't, they just end up not making it as big as people thought they would.
Do you think soccer in America is on an upward trajectory?
I mean, it definitely is. I mean, if you watch, I don't know if you watch it all, but if you watch European soccer compared to the quality here, it's like so different.
It's a lot better in Europe.
Oh my God, so much more entertaining.
Why is that?
They're just so much better.
Is it because it's just
faster
like
paced? They're more technical.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's come a long way here. I remember, and there's a lot more money in it now here. When I was graduating, I didn't have a great senior year, so I was hoping to get drafted by MLS, and that was early days MLS. But I knew a bunch of guys that got drafted, and so crazy. The rookie contract for MLS back then was those guys were making $15,000 a year. I mean, nothing. Like you could make more on waiting tables.
Wait, but what did they take care of in order to pay you $15K?
Yeah, like housing and food. But still, $15,000 was like, that's what it was.
And to live wherever you got drafted. Like if you got drafted to LA or New York. Like,
yeah, exactly.
So for them, they would pay for where you live. Do they have like do they have an MLS house?
Yeah, they would have housing for like the team, for players that, it was so low.
That's
So whereas like if you, I remember, what was it, my junior year, I trained with Ipswich Town over in England for like a few weeks during the summer. And, that was at the time, I think second division. So like second league down. And like the average contract there, those guys were making $200-300 minimum grand a year. So just so much more money in Europe.
How many rounds in the MLS draft do they have that you hope to be drafted?
I don't even remember back then. All I know is I didn't get drafted.
What was the number one team in the country when you were playing?
Holy shit. This was 2005. So it's a long, I don't even remember.
Was it like a Duke?
Yeah,
type?
Duke was really good. North Carolina.
Yeah, Elon was good. Yeah, and then you guys, Zach DiDonato played at Elon. Do you know that?
He played at Elon. Yeah. He started. Where was he at? He was at a school and then he transferred, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And there's some smaller soccer schools like Akron.
Yeah, right, in Ohio.
Southern Methodist in Dallas.
Sure.
Yeah. That like other sports they're not known for, but for soccer. They'll recruit guys from like Africa.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah,
that's like some schools are like that with hockey.
Yeah.
And it seems like hockey and soccer are really the only two schools that will just have a very good program randomly.
Yeah.
Like Quinnipiac hockey, like St. Cloud State or something for hockey. So stuff like that.
Kind of like that. What was the Adam Sandler movie where he was the basketball scout? Did you see that movie?
Oh, that was a good movie.
Yeah,
what was
really
that? It was
good.
on Netflix.
I think it was kind of paralleling like the Giannis, how they recruited Giannis, right?
Antetokounmpo?
Yeah.
But it was with like a tall white guy.
Yeah, exactly.
I forget what it's called.
Yeah, so I guess they do it for basketball. Like Jack Crawford, right? That's what happened with him. He got recruited. He came to play high school basketball here.
No, I knew he played 10 years in the NFL, but what's his story? This is a fellow comedian, by the way.
Thank me later for the shout out.
No, go ahead. Give me a little bit more.
Well, I'll let him tell. But he was recruited to come play here he was from London, and then he ended
to play basketball.
I think Jack, right? I think it was basketball, and then he ended up being. I mean,
insane,
he's
man.
An athlete, so
And it's also like stand-up comedy. There's so many characters that like you never know unless you sit down with them on the Ted Jones World Podcast couch. Like we've had probably I mean, you're probably around the 250th guest. I'd say something like that. And each time for the most part, I'm shocked at some of these people's lives, yourself included, man. Very cool.
I mean, congrats on 200, man.
I mean, this is episode.
I saw you had over episode 450. You're over 450.
I think this is like episode. I think this is probably episode 470,
awesome,
something like
man.
that. So we've been doing this for like 5.5 years, man.
I mean, it's all about consistency. So
Yeah. We'll see. So listen to my buddy Nick over here. sign us to a long-term deal. But yeah, man. Anyway, I enjoy doing this, and I love talking to interesting people like you, man.
I always tell people that, because you talk to people that are not in the stand-up world, and it's hard to kind of communicate what it is, unless you're doing it. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Yeah, I do, because before I really started getting into stand-up and was serious about it, like maybe 5.5, 6 years ago, you don't get it unless you are really into it. If you are someone who works corporate, or you're working on something where you've guaranteed something every 2 weeks, you don't really see the I guess the long-term goal or what that person is trying to do. Because like, it's a funny thing, if you're just going out and doing a show on Friday or Saturday night when 95% of the people are doing something else on a Friday or Saturday night, or Tuesday at 8 p.m. It's just it's difficult to relate to.
Do you ever see the look on someone's face when they're like, how often do you do it? And I'm like, every day. And they're like,
yeah.
What?
Yeah.
They,
like when
they
I
don't, and I know it doesn't compute, because I've had the same person ask me 3-4 times how many times I do it. And every time I'm like, every day. And they're like, wait, what? Like, it doesn't compute with people. They can't grasp.
Yeah. Like when I tell people I do like I'm on stage like anywhere from like 10 to 15 times a week, usually more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't compute.
They're
like, what?
Yeah, they can't. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Because, I mean, within the last 6 months, it's been the most that I've been on stage, like every month. Like in October, I did like 72 or 3 spots, if we are including open mics.
Yeah.
And each time I'm like, all right, I feel like what's really going to be my maximum? And being in New York City, it's a lot easier to touch the stage just because you have so many more clubs and things are so much closer. But you started stand-up in Boston.
Started in Boston, and when the pandemic hit, I was about a year in. Really killed momentum for me, because I was just starting to get some club spots there. And then, pandemic, the Boston scene's come back incredibly well from what I can see. I mean, I've only been up a few times, but it's like, there are a ton of rooms open there now, which is great. But yeah, I started coming down here because of the pandemic. There's just more stuff going on here, and fell in love with it here, man. I always wanted to live in New York City, but I feel like a kid in a candy store down here. I just loved getting on stage. Like the amount of stage time you can get, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's
just like going back to what we were talking about earlier. One of my favorite parts of like being in the community is like, it's just incredible to me the amount of different people, diversity you meet doing it. It's like you would never be exposed to people in their 70s doing it, people who are disabled in wheelchairs doing it, people from who are athletes or whatever it's just like incredible. It's like the coolest thing.
Yeah, it does seem like there are the most represented group. Maybe I'm speaking out of hand or out of pocket when I say this, but it does seem like there are a lot of former athletes, people that were serious in sports or individual sports that do pursue it.
I think the discipline and the willingness to fail lends itself
to stand up.
Yeah. The feedback cycle is so quick, Like we could write something today and go test it out somewhere and we'd know. It was like an evolution for me where I wanted to be a novelist, and then I wanted to write screenplays. But like the feedback cycle you're on your own, and then you don't know for years if it's good. Whereas I feel like with stand-up, you can write something and then get on stage and pretty quickly, I mean, maybe it's over the course of a few months you're fine-tuning it, but I feel like that's one of the things I like about it, where, to your point, like, you can measure 3 months from now, you're like, oh, I'm better than I was.
Yeah, which is insane, and also talks to like the amount of repetitions that you get on stage really does help.
Yeah.
I'd say that there is some validity in taking off a few days, taking off a week if you really need it, but you are not getting as better as you would if you were there almost every single day, if not every day.
Yeah. What's your philosophy on that? I know I'm getting better at like giving myself freedom to take time off. And
Yeah, sometimes it's tough for me.
It's tough for me, but I found, to what you were saying, I feel like you need to step away, and it gives you like perspective.
Yeah, over the last, I'd say 4.5, 5 months, it's been difficult for me to stay away for like I haven't taken more than 3 days off in a row in 4.5, 5 months, which I realized that I probably should.
Yeah,
but I do feel like this past Sunday was the first full day that I took off in probably 2 months. And it's difficult sometimes because I'm like, oh, well, I have an opportunity to go do it. Should I just go do it? But I think that there's some, it's on both sides. It's like you don't want to burn out, but what's really burning out? If you're okay doing it and you like and you want to do it and you're not like dying and I'd say dying. Like what is really the burnout? I don't know.
Yeah,
it's not like it's not like somebody's forcing me to do it.
Yeah,
it's ultimately me, and I think you would get more burned out if somebody else has leverage or power over you, and they're telling you to do it, and you really don't want to do it. When it's just like stand up, it's like, all right, well, do you want to do it or not?
That's exactly it. I mean, at the end of the day, no one's forcing you to get up there.
Yeah.
It's different once you have a stadium booked and like 20,000 people are waiting for you, then you're like, oh, I got to show up. Yeah.
What's been your career highlight so far, or something that really has stood out to you since you've moved to New York?
Since I moved to New York, just the people, man. It's such a good community. People are, in my experience, really supportive, and I don't know if there's like a specific show. I mean, there are moments, I feel like, where you're like, have a set where you're like, wow, I got a lot better.
Yeah.
Where you're like at flow state and you're like, wow, man, I'm really a lot better. And then the next set, you're like,
yeah, I know.
Maybe I got worse.
Yeah, it's funny to realize that.
Yeah.
One of my dad sees me do stand up maybe once, maybe twice a month. Once a month, maybe twice a month, I'll say. And he saw me do a set when we do our show Monday, which is like every Monday. Margarita Monday, by the way. Check the link in this bio. You want to come to the comedy show. Nick has done it, I think, multiple times, but it's a great show. Free
Tequila,
show.
baby.
Yeah. So my dad saw me, and like the crowd, in my opinion, and I think they were a little bit quiet. So he was like, Teddy, you know what you got to do? You got to make them laugh more. I was like, Dad, it's an insane thing to say. And then he was like, well, what if we just hired someone to make them laugh? I was like, all right, Dad, get out of here. And then last night I had one of the best sets I've had on a Monday night in months, in 2.5, 3 months. So I felt like I was on fire last night. And that just goes from show to show. There are some rooms that, if you guys are not in the stand-up community and you're listening to this, there are some rooms that are known as hot, where it's a room that maybe is more generous with the material that you're bringing because they're in a good mood. The people next to them are laughing, but it depends. When people are coming to see a stand-up comedy show and it's a showcase, there are 5 or 6 comics on the show, and they're not coming specifically for a Ted Jones, Nick Tornaritis. They are expecting a certain type of show. They're not coming directly for that specific person, but then once you're selling out the stadiums and arenas, they're coming for you, so they already like you. They already know what to expect. So, it just builds until you get to that point where things become easier on stage, and it really is the developmental period. However long it takes. If it takes you 6 months, takes you 6 years. Getting to that point takes time.
Doesn't that drive you crazy when you have someone who can, friend, family, whatever, date, come see you, and you don't have a great set, and then the next night you have an amazing set, and you're like,
and it could be around the same type of energy or vibe that you were giving out. It's just the crowd is just different.
Yeah, it's just so it's like sports in that way. It's so similar in that, like, you can prepare, but then it's live. So like, who the hell knows what's gonna happen? It's just,
well, I think sports, though, you more so know how you're gonna perform. Maybe not in basketball, but I think maybe in tennis and soccer, Kind of. Don't
You
you
are
think?
more in control because there's not the crowd feedback. You're not relying on someone to.
Like soccer,
You're not, you don't wait for someone to laugh before you score a goal. You know, you're not dependent on.
Right. Like, stand up is more like, all right, is this crowd going to be receptive to what I'm giving them tonight?
Right.
Most likely, but it could be a little bit different. Maybe something weird happened with a big group of people before they came into the show. Maybe the 10 people in the front row are in a bad mood, or they came together, they're chatty. A lot of different dynamics in comedy, but for the most part, I mean, I grade every set that I do, even if it's just an open mic. I'll do from A to D or whatever. I don't think I've ever given myself an F, but I've maybe in my career I've given myself maybe 2 A's, and I usually will be around like the B/B minus kind of area. Sometimes B plus, rarely A minus. I would say rarely D, but usually just like how I feel on stage, how the crowd reacts. If I'm I don't know how you feel about eating before going on stage, but it's just like my overall energy. I feel like if I eat right before, I don't feel great. There's certain things that I know that I can't really do before I go on stage.
Yeah, I really try to avoid eating.
How long before?
I mean, I would rather be like starving than have anything.
I haven't eaten today.
Yeah, I'll go 12 hours if I have
easily.
to.
Yeah. Like I just feel so much more sharp if I don't eat.
Sharp, yeah.
I see people like at a place like the Comedy Shop. They're eating a cheese spinach pizza 5 minutes before they go on. I'm like,
right.
How do
you
doing?
do? I just feel so sluggish. Like my brain stops working.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people do feel like that. I used to smoke weed all the time. I haven't smoked weed in like 9 months, but I used to smoke 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 times a day, easily, like joints. Yeah, and I'd have to plan out when I'd smoke. Like I wouldn't do it 3 hours before a podcast. I wouldn't do it like an hour or 2 hours before I go on stage. And now I just feel so much more free now that I don't smoke weed, or I know how to prepare to do stand up at a higher level at a particular time. Like I know if I have a bigger type of show where I would theoretically get nervous before, like I did the Snapchat comedy show out in LA. These guys know about it, but I didn't eat that whole day. And that's what I would plan on doing if I theoretically would not get nervous. So I would just wait until after the show and eat at 8 p.m.
Yeah.
It usually helps.
Oh yeah, you just feel sharp and have energy, and I think I feel less nervous. Like
if you don't eat.
Yeah, if I don't eat, I feel, or at least more in control of the nerves.
Yeah. Do you do coffee though? I'll do coffee.
I will. I try to not drink coffee after noon anymore, just because I think I sleep better. But I love coffee. Like outside of the sleep thing, I would drink it all day.
I can drink it all day for the most part. Like I'll be popping espresso beans at like 8 p.m.
Yeah.
I could
sleep. I've seen you doing that at a comedy shop. You just eat the.
Yeah, dude. I'll just be eating like handfuls of them, and it doesn't really affect me at all. I'm a really good sleeper.
I always eat them when I have an espresso martini, and they put the beans in there.
Oh, there you go.
I eat them. Oh, I love them.
Yeah, but those aren't enough for me. There's only like 3 or 4 that they put in there, right?
Well,
they don't put enough.
You're lucky if you get 3. 2.
That's why I take a handful of them. You know what I mean, dude?
They're so good.
So what's been your favorite part about New York City since moving here? I know you said the energy and the people, but is there something specific?
Oh my God. I mean, just everything. Yeah, energy, people. I mean, stand up. I just love that you can bounce from room to room. You know, I have people visit, and I mean, it's so fun. It's like because you know, these shows are in bars or clubs where people can drink. So, you know, when I have people in town, we'll bounce from show to show. And it's a cool way to see the city, get some comedy, have some drinks. It's like, oh my God, I just feel very grateful that you can do it here, you know? Like you can just, it's like really as much as you want to take advantage of it, you can.
Yeah.
Where it's got to the point where though I'm trying to be more strategic about, I mean, I'm like, I got to allocate more time I'm an 80s guy. I got to get comfortable with the social media stuff.
I mean, bro, I'm
like, I can get on stage.
But only in the last, 4 or 5, 6 months is really when I've started to become more comfortable and realize that selling tickets now, it's a matter of having the act and also having the social media, the numbers and things like that. It's really only been apparent since the pandemic when TikTok got huge, Instagram got huge, and everyone who has been really selling out the arenas with their podcasts and stadiums and putting up stuff on the internet. That's really what seemed to have helped them. So
yeah, so that's,
we're all on the journey.
Because you mentioned how many times you get up a week. I'm starting to be like, there's only so much time in the day. Like, how do I allocate how much time to stage time versus doing something on social media?
Yeah, and I think it's a balancing act. It's all like
Yeah.
a balancing act. Whether it's like taking the full Sunday to put together the 3 or 4 clips that you're going to be posting a week or whatever you're going to do. It's just because it's different than it was 10 years ago, where it's like there's so much more pressured for you to be on stage all the time, where everybody was kind of at the same baseline, where it's like, all right, well, this guy who's been doing stand-up for 5 years isn't as good as the guy who's been doing it for 10 years, so let's book the guy who's been doing it for 10 years to headline this 400-seat theater. Whether now the guy who's been doing it for 5 years and the guy who's been doing it 10 years, well, the guy who's been doing it 5 years has 1 million followers. The guy who's been doing it 10 years doesn't have as many followers as him, so this guy will put more butts in the seat.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
which
makes sense. I mean,
yeah,
it's a business.
Definitely. And I think I've spoken about this many times. It's like you want to rise at the kind of the same level right now. You want to be a few years in and you want to have X amount of followers, and you want to have the hour act before you go and start touring and not have that act. So you want people to come back and be just a solid fan or customer for you, whatever it is, fan for the most part.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Wow. So you were talking about, you used to smoke. Do you feel a lot better, obviously, now that you just don't smoke as much?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, for months I had cravings, and I would like dream that I smoked. I had insane dreams, but now it's more how I feel. Like, I'm also vegan. I think you knew that.
I think,
yeah. So that helps. But just anything that will make me feel better, I won't shy away from it. Like, there was a 2 or 3 years where I was waking up at like 4:40 in the morning during the pandemic, and I've tried so many different things. The year long of cold showers, so I won't shy away from things that are like health kicks. And I've been on both ends of the spectrum, man, where I was not taking care of my health at all, drinking too much, eating too much crap. And now I think I'm at the point where I'm not balanced, like maybe I'll drink 2 drinks every 6 weeks, something like that. But I'm at a point where I'm like, okay, I know what I can do. I know if I have 1 or 2 White Claws in a night, I'll be okay the next day. It won't be the best next day, but I can do it. I can handle it. I just can't have the 10 to 12 drinks that I had, when I was at UConn.
All right. I knew you drank a White Claw. That was...
Were you there that night? I had a neutral, I think. Yeah.
Neutral.
That was one of the first times I've drinking at a club in a very long time, comedy club.
Well, I have a similar. I mean, I used to drink a lot for most of my life, adult life.
Yeah.
And that, I've cut back in the last few years, and I notice a huge difference.
Yeah, definitely helps.
More clear-headed.
Yeah,
more energy.
Yeah, I think if you're doing it once, maybe twice a week, it definitely won't affect you. But it's just a matter of how quickly you could bounce back the next day. Because you feel a lot better when you don't wake up hungover. That's that's for sure.
My hangovers are. I love tequila, but
you got to get that clean tequila with no additives.
I mean, it's no additives.
Yeah, that's the guy who took my blood the other day. He was like, this Danolo is no additive. It's very good. I was like, all right, I guess I got to try it. Next time I drink, we'll see. But we'll see. I'm sure a lot of them do have additives.
Tequila, yeah. But my hangovers just got... I mean, I'm 40 now, and my hangovers are... to the point where it's like it helps me not drink. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I'm very happy when I drink. Like, it makes me... I'm happy.
Yeah.
But then I know what's on the other side.
You know what's coming.
10
hours later.
Like, you know what?
I do feel like if I stop drinking by like 9 o'clock and then I just hammer water for the next 4 hours, I'll feel, obviously a lot better. But if I keep drinking past like 12, 1 p.m., it affects 1 a.m., it'll affect my sleep, it'll affect my next day, dehydration and stuff like that,
Yeah, oh, definitely, yeah.
But you just got to stay healthy and stay on the path, man.
When I first started doing stand-up, I was like, I don't want to use it as a crutch. So I was like, which helped me drink less. Because I was like, I knew some guys that would like drink every time they got up. And I was like,
I did that the first few times.
Really?
Yeah.
I just knew myself. I was like, if I get used to that, as like kind of a crutch for myself.
Yeah,
then
it
I'm
could
gonna
be a
I'm gonna
huge
I'm gonna be
rush.
boozing. You're gonna find me in a gutter
Easily,
at some point. You know,
easily, and that's probably what was happening. You know, back 20, 25 years ago with when the drugs and drinking were so prevalent.
Yeah.
And people now less so get paid in drinks, but still it happens. You know, yeah, have a couple of drinks. That's your payment for the night. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is funny that I feel like that was definitely a scene in Boston where more comics here in New York are like very health conscious, which is nice. I felt like
Yeah.
a lot of people don't drink or they're focused on healthy eating.
Yeah. Especially, I mean, in the circle or anytime I see you around, I don't know if you notice, but like people are not really. I mean, I know I spoke on some people eating right before they go on stage, but people are like, for the most part, locked in. Nobody's really nervous. Everyone's kind of just like, you know, low key, even keel. People go on stage, then maybe afterwards they'll have a drink, but like you don't see it that much.
No. Yeah.
No, maybe like very few people maybe smoke a little bit of weed outside, but yeah, you definitely see comics are becoming healthier, and I think it's because they realize that it's also during the day you got to be doing shit. It's not just waiting until 9 p.m. to go do a 15-minute spot or 15-minute spot and then go home and whatever it is.
And just it's like a competitive edge almost at this point where like if you're not hungover, you're gonna wake up and write, as opposed to the guy who's hungover.
Yeah.
He's not getting up early.
Yeah, man.
So
speaking of writing, man, I do really enjoy your writing.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
You're a really good writer.
Do you like sit down and write?
Yeah,
Daily.
Yeah. I would say maybe not daily, but I do. I'm writing like 4 or 5 days a week for sure. And then also when I do open mics, I think that really helps too. Just like getting my thoughts out, you know.
Oh, for sure. That's what I use it for a lot. It's just like I have to say it in front of people, otherwise I'm like.
And that's also kind of where I find the balance between like if I'm not writing on one day, like I'm either editing, shooting, or thinking about an idea for a sketch.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to balance everything, you know.
Do you find there's bleed over though? Like if you're doing something for like online content,
Yes.
you probably get something where you're like, I can use that on stage. Right?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And I think that that goes for if I'm just saying something on stage and I'm like, oh, that's not really a complete joke. Okay, well, I'll just say it and put it on Instagram.
Yeah.
You know? So yes, there's definitely bleed over. And I think it goes both ways. And I think that's also a good way. That's a good way to do it.
Right.
You know, like if there's a sketch idea that you have that also would be funny on stage. I don't know if we have seen that so much in stand-ups acts, but I think we're going to start to see it more. And I think I'm balancing it out, and I'm doing that. You know, like things that I've said on social media that I'll say on stage, things that I'll say on stage or do on social media. You know, you can't keep everything locked in a secret tight box as you would previously before the social media days, where it's like, well, yeah, come out and see me, and then you'll know if I'm funny or not. Just kind of you gotta be both.
It's so different now. Because the guys back, like I love Kevin Hart, right? And he didn't put his first special out until when, like 10 years in, you know, where now it's like you just gotta. I gotta get over that hurdle where like I gotta put stuff out there, you know.
Well, you're a very funny guy, man, so you totally should.
Thank you, I appreciate it. But I grew up with AOL Instant Messenger, you know, where
The away messages, those are heat, dude.
Dude, your mother would pick up the phone and you lose the connection. You're like, what the?
Yeah. I remember that too, man.
You'd be downloading something on Napster, chat.
Yeah. Or Acquisition. I guess that was a little bit later. Kazam. Shazam. No, Kazam.
Kazam, that's right.
And then Shazam, you guys obviously know about.
And literally, your aunt calls, and you're like, well, I gotta wait now. So now it's just like, just fucking put everything.
You gotta put everything. You gotta be super transparent, man. Nick, dude, this has been a great episode, bro. I really appreciate you coming on, dude.
Thanks for having me, man.
Of course,
Appreciate
man.
it, yeah.
Nick, before we get out here, we're popping up your Instagram. Let us know your handle, and if you have anything exciting coming up, this will be out. This episode will be out within like 48 hours or so. So if you have stuff this weekend or coming up in November, please let us know.
It's at Nick Tornaritis on Instagram. It's Nick Tornaritis, Greek last name, and we actually have a Greek show at Rodney's, which I'm hosting. I know it's gonna be sick.
Are there a lot of Greeks in the game? I guess enough. There's at least 6, right?
Nick Callis will be headlining.
Love it.
November 16th up at Rodney's, which is the old Dangerfields Club. Come out. You can buy your tickets online at Kefi Comedy.
Okay, can we find them on your Instagram page too?
Yeah, I'll be posting about it. So yeah, definitely come out. It's the pre-sale already sold out, so
Let's go.
it'll be a good show. So thanks for having me, man.
Of course, man. Nick, you're a great dude. I look forward to seeing you at the clubs. Until the next time you're on the pod, we'll see you next time. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you. Peace.